We are awakening together. This is our weekly gathering we hold online. For more information, visit our website, awakening-together.org. We'd love to see you there.
All right. Okay. Good morning, everyone. And happy Sunday. Where are we? September? My God, it's hard to keep track, isn't it? Thank goodness I have a calendar hanging here telling me what the time is. Today we are here for the weekly gathering, which is called The Greatest Gifts. As I mentioned, we're here for a weekly gathering called The Greatest Gifts. And one of the things that all of the ministers always do is we pick out typically a core value as the statement of purpose for this week's gathering. But when I was looking at our page that has the core values, there's a little introduction to the core values right at the top. And I felt like that paragraph was a better fit for today's weekly gathering. So I've selected that introductory paragraph as our statement of purpose for today. And this is that paragraph. Awakening together is a universal assembly of peers dedicated to recognizing and embracing universal wisdom, regardless of the form in which it appears. We are also dedicated to recognizing the ways we deny universal wisdom by adopting personal beliefs and biases. We want to recognize these limitations so we can free ourselves from them and open to the continuous flow of universal wisdom. And I'm going to read those last two sentences again because they really are the purpose of today's gathering. So if you didn't listen deeply the first time, you have another chance. We are dedicated to recognizing the ways we deny universal wisdom by adopting personal beliefs and biases. We want to recognize these limitations so we can free ourselves from them and open to the continuous flow of universal wisdom. So that is the purpose of our gathering today. So thank you, Don. Let's go into our prayer. So today's weekly gathering comes from my heart. It is my gift to everyone who will listen. I won't share anything today, as far as I know, that hasn't been shared before. But as I awaken more and more, I understand more and more why Jesus used to say, for those who have ears to hear. Awakening is a glorious journey that really should not be missed in a human lifetime. It brings so much simplicity, I admit, but so much just joy and peace and freedom and acceptance and ease and something else that I can't quite put my finger on to put a word to it, but it's this ability to be with everything without being affected by it. And a lot of people want this gift, which is why, of course, they're on the spiritual path, but they don't understand the gifts that precede it. The gifts that maybe feel a little bit more like work, a little bit more like struggle, sometimes more like pain. But they're the gifts that are taking one step by step by step to this more ultimate gift. And because people do not understand the early gifts, the previous gifts, they miss their opportunity to gather them up and use them. And so this weekly gathering is from my heart. I'm saying, please listen. You have the opportunity. It's right there. It's presented every day. See it for the gift that it is and embrace it, because it is taking you somewhere you want to go. Don't avoid. Amen. And so with that said, Dawn volunteered to be my reader this week. That made it really easy on me. I appreciated that. And I said yes. So I'm going to turn it over to Dawn. She's going to read some excerpts from The Transparency of Things by Rupert Spira. So Dawn, the mic is yours.
Thank you, Regina. Glad to help. Glad to be of service. Hi, everyone. And this is an excerpt from The Transparency of Things by Rupert Spira. One quick thing, Shauna, if you can keep an eye on the waiting room there, thank you. Okay, back to the reading. Consciousness is free to withdraw its exclusive identification with the body-mind whenever it pleases. We forget that as an infant, we gradually learned to identify our self-consciousness with successive levels of the body and mind. In most cases, the withdrawal of this identification happens in reverse order, in a series of stages, starting with the most obvious layers of identification with the body and the mind, and continuing to the deepest layers. We're like a deep well, and the presence of intelligence, love, and beauty in our lives is like the appearance of the sun at midday shining directly into the well. Normally, only the creatures living at the surface of the well are active due to the lack of light lower down. However, for a short period each day, the creatures living at the deeper levels wake up due to the presence of the sun shining directly above them. Such is the presence of intelligence in our lives. As the sun of intelligence, love, and beauty comes more frequently over the well, so deeper and deeper layers of identification come into the light and are revealed. In this way, consciousness sees its identification with successive layers of the body-mind and clearly understands how it limits itself in this way. The understanding brings about a natural relaxation of this identification. Every time it relaxes this identification, it is, without knowing it to begin with, remembering itself, returning to itself. Consciousness never really returns to itself. It just abides knowingly in and as itself. It no longer pretends to be other than it is. To begin with, it is not accustomed to this abidance within itself, and it grasps again for the old objects, the old habits of avoidance and resistance with which it has become familiar and comfortable. You know, that was so powerful. I really want to read that again. To begin with, it is not accustomed to this abidance within itself, and it grasps again the old objects, the old habits of avoidance and resistance with which it has become familiar and comfortable. However, over and over again, this identification with layers of the body-mind is relaxed through understanding. And consciousness becomes increasingly comfortable abiding in and as itself. The ease of being begins to pervade experience. From time to time, old layers of identification with the body-mind reappear. However, they lose their separating power. With it, the capacity to induce suffering. Those that are necessary for the functioning of everyday life continue as and when they're needed. Those that are not functional drop away naturally. More and more we find ourselves in our natural condition. This is not an extraordinary state. It's simple and natural. And it may even dawn on us that without the mind being aware of anything special. In place of the subtle sense of lack that pervaded our thoughts, feelings, and activities in the past, a sense of well-being and ease begins to shine in the background of our lives and to overflow into the foreground of our activities and relationships. The experience of love is precisely this relaxation of consciousness, exclusive identification with a separate body-mind, and as a result, the inevitable inclusion of the other, of all others within itself. For that reason, love is said and felt to be unconditional, uncaused, unmodified, and universal. It has no opposite. It is inherent in our true nature. That's it for the reading. Back to you, Regina.
Thanks for reminding me. It's back to me. It's funny because I do forget now. Like when we listen to a song, I go so deeply into the song. I don't know if you've noticed there's like a little pause after the song before I start talking. That's because I forget that I'm the minister. And like, oh yeah, I'm on. This is a part of what being in the now does. I get so into the song or so into the reading or so into whatever I'm listening to that I forget. It takes me a second or two to remember. So that was helpful, Don. Back to you, Regina. So I just want to go over the reading again, I think. I don't always do that, but I think I want to go over the reading. I want to let the reading guide me because there's so much in this reading. And I know when you hear the reading, you hear it, but I don't know if you hear everything just by sitting and listening. I sat and contemplated this, and that's a little different than just listening to someone read it. So I want to go over it a little more deeply. So the very first paragraph in the reading is, consciousness is free to withdraw its exclusive identification with the body-mind whenever it pleases. That's really what dreaming is. Dreaming is exclusive identification with the body-mind. This is what I am. Everything else is not me. We call it the belief in separation. And, Rupert Spira is telling us that it can withdraw that anytime it pleases. This is like Jesus saying in the Course. I remember in the workbook, he says every now and then you could, something like you could wake up today, right? It's the same statement, anytime that it pleases. And the song that Don was playing prior to the gathering today, in that song, Muji said, when you say I, remember God. And, that's really the error that we make. When we say I, we mean the body-mind. One example that I've used many times is, if the mind says, I hate her, we just believe it. We never ever question it. And the reason I use that example is, when I started the spiritual path, there was a particular woman I worked with that I felt that way about. And every time I saw her face and body walking towards me down the hallway, I hate her, and I'd feel all those feelings, right? It never occurred to me that I am not the mind. And that just because the mind says, I hate her, that doesn't make it true. Now, of course, during the next 9 months, after I started the course, I did start questioning that. And by the time I left that workplace, I no longer had that experience of hating her. But most of us, we don't question. The mind says, I hate her. I means mind. We wouldn't usually go around telling people that, oh, I means mind. But it does. I means mind. And so if the mind says, I hate her, then I feel all those feelings, right? But Muji says, when you say I, remember God. I. So what is I? That is the question, isn't it? We call that self-inquiry. What is I? Well, Rupert Spira says that we forget that as an infant, we gradually learnt to identify that I with the body mind. In other words, we weren't born with the idea that I is the body mind. We were taught that. And I remember teaching Jasmine. I remember laying in the backyard and, I'd have my fingers up and she'd reach out and touch them. And I'd go, my fingers, your fingers, right? My nose, your nose. I mean, I definitely taught her that stuff. I taught her every bit of it. And we were all taught that and we all learned that, right? So we were gradually taught to identify I with the body mind. And as a result, what Rupert Spira's point is, therefore, the unlearning is also typically gradual. Now, we all hear these stories about these people who, just the ego just falls away, just boom, in this moment, the whole thing falls away, and they suddenly realize that I is not the body mind, I is God, right? I is consciousness. But that may not be the typical way. Those extraordinary stories may not be the typical way. More than once lately has it come across, in something that I was reading, and I can't even remember all the sources, but more than once lately has it come across that typically it's more gradual. And in fact, Rupert Spira says in this reading that at some point, it may be so gradual that you may not even notice when the awakening has occurred. And I remember when I lived in North Carolina, in fact, I remember exactly where I was. I was in our guest room vacuuming. And this was a time when I was still scribing NTI, but I was near the end, in the last, I don't know where, but we'll call it the last quarter somewhere of NTI. And I'm vacuuming and I'm very dependent on the inner voice. And the inner voice started talking to me while I was vacuuming, and it told me, two things. One thing it told me was that someday the inner voice would go away, that I wouldn't hear it like I do now, because as long as I continue to hear it like I do now, I'm going to think of me as this body mind and the inner voice as an other that I listen to, right? So at some point the inner voice has to go away. And then the other thing it told me was that my awakening was going to be so gradual that when I actually awakened, I might not even notice it at first. And the ego would just kind of fade away, and it may take a bit of time before I recognize, oh, it's not there anymore, right? Maybe being in certain circumstances and not seeing it arise like it used to, and finally like, wow, it's gone. And that's really what Rupert Spira is saying. In fact, he says that this unlearning or this withdrawing away from this exclusive identification with the body mind, he says it's gradual, and it typically happens in reverse order. So the order that we learned, reverse order, he says, is how we're going to unlearn, which might mean these are your fingers is one of the last things you're going to let go of, because it's one of the first things you learn, right? My fingers, your fingers, right? Which is really identification with the body. So that may be one of the last things to go away, because it's one of the first things you learned. And in fact, when we get to the end of the gathering today, the song I picked for the very end was the Beatles' get back, right? Get back to where you once belonged. That's because we want to take this journey in reverse order back to where we began, where there was just identification with consciousness and not exclusive identification with a body mind. But the reason I picked this reading, that's all the introduction. The reason I picked this reading is the next 2-3 paragraphs. Let me read them to you again, and then I'll tell you what they mean to me. He says, we are like a deep well, and the presence of intelligence, love, and beauty in our lives. The presence of intelligence, love, and beauty in our lives is like the appearance of the sun at midday when the sun is directly overhead, right? Intelligence, love, and beauty is like the appearance of the sun at midday shining directly into the well. So I am the well, and when the sun is directly over, which is really God, the divine, the Holy Spirit, he calls it intelligence, love, and beauty, it's shining directly into this well. He says, normally, only the creatures living at the surface of the well are active. And those creatures are creatures like, I hate her. Those creatures are creatures like, oh my God, I'm so busy, I can't stand it. Those creatures are creatures like, oh my gosh, I just wish everybody would go away. Those creatures are creatures like, I don't have enough money. I never have enough money. All these things that like you could sit down and you could tell me that you think that cause you suffering. Those are the creatures at the surface, right? And normally only those creatures are visible. But he says, normally only the creatures living at the surface of the well are active due to the lack of light lower down. However, for a short period each day, the creatures living at deeper levels wake up. I mean, they're actually down there sleeping. We often hear this, they're dormant, right? They're dormant. They're actually down there sleeping. But when the light comes directly overhead, they wake up due to the presence of the sun shining directly above them. Such is the presence of intelligence in our lives. As the sun of intelligence, love, and beauty comes more frequently over the well, deeper and deeper layers of identification come into the light and are revealed. Okay, let me tell you what this means in Gina speak. Okay? This means the further you go along the spiritual path, the more crap comes up. That's what that means. And that is the divine intelligence, love, light, beauty at work in your lives. And the reason I'm telling you this, because I talk to a lot of you all. Every now and then I'll have a phone conversation with someone, but I talk to in retreats. Sometimes people email me. I want to tell you, you guys are a lot like my dog. And I love my dog, so that's not an insult. We have a new dog. Her name is Ellie. She has been with us 5 weeks this weekend. She was a stray when they picked her up, starving. We don't know anything about her life prior to becoming a stray, but she's house trained, so we know she had a house at some point. Maybe she got lost, maybe she ran away, maybe she was dumped. People dump dogs, who knows? But, she has baggage. And we're actually working with a dog trainer now to help heal her mind. And one of the things the dog trainer said as he assessed her, as he talked about the different defense mechanisms that dogs use. And one of those defense mechanisms, which is her primary defense mechanism, is avoidance. Right? So we are teaching her not to avoid. That's the primary thing we're teaching her. And it's tough. Because she's learned, I'm safe if I avoid this situation. I'm safe if I avoid this. I'm safe if I avoid this. And I thought, oh my God, that's just like everybody else. That's like all the people I know. I know there are people out there. In fact, inner cities actually have a different type of person that uses or not always, but a lot more of it. You hear of a lot more of it in inner cities for some reason, aggression. Right? That's where we have the gangs and people drive-by shootings. Dogs can do that too. That can be a defense mechanism. Aggression. Aggression is just a defense mechanism. I'm going to kill you before you kill me. Right? But I don't know many people that are using that defense mechanism, at least not as strongly. Maybe every now and then. I can see people, maybe snap at me because they think I'm going to snap at them, or snap at each other. But for the most part, the strongest defense mechanism I see my friends using is avoidance. They're trying to avoid the situations that make them uncomfortable. And of course, what we are now doing with Ellie is we are teaching her to move through those situations to the family love, the family joy, and the treat that's waiting on the other side, right? And that's really, my God, it sounds so basic, but that's really what Holy Spirit taught me. To move through the pain to the freedom, to move through the darkness to the light. My God, this is what Revolver is all about, right? When they're on the roof and they're golfing and they're teaching Jake, they tell him that the ego hides behind your pain. So that means the more that you try to avoid the painful situations, right? The more you're staying in the ego. You're staying in the fear. In Ellie's case, she's not recognizing the loving family that she has. In your case, you're not recognizing the love that everything is. So what he's saying is that as we commit ourselves to awakening, as we make a heart decision that we want to awaken, intelligence shines over our well more and more, so that this deep pain is seen. And we need to see that for the gift that it is, instead of continually trying to avoid the situations. And there's all kinds of ways that we try and avoid them, but I think one of the most common ways is we try to control our outer environment. And in fact, that's exactly what the dog trainer said about Ellie. Said she's trying to control us, right, in her own way. She's trying to teach us, for example, for some reason, she has a food phobia. I would suspect, but this is a story, but just to kind of give you an image, so this may not be true, but just to give you an image, it kind of looks like someone used food to get her to come near, and then when she got near, in some way she was hurt. Maybe she was put in a cage, maybe she was hit, but so she associates food with bad, right? And so what we've been doing in order to feed her is we put the food down and we leave the room so she's completely alone, and she sneaks up and eats it and jumps back in her safe spot. Well, the trainer said that we're actually encouraging her to keep the fear. She's learning to control her environment. She's taught us to leave the room so she can eat. So now what we're doing, and this was even hard for Gina, now what we're doing is we hold the food. She has to look us in the eye and then eat the food while we're holding the food bowl. Guess who didn't eat yesterday? Because if she doesn't do it within like just a minute, we walk away and she doesn't get food. So she didn't eat yesterday at all. And I got to tell you, I didn't feel real good about it. In fact, Jasmine said to me, she sounded so much like me. She goes, "Mom, you can't be unhappy just because the dog isn't eating." And it was so funny because I thought, well, it's true. This feeling of not feeling good is here, but actually I'm not unhappy. I tried to explain it to her and she said my voice was annoying, so I shut up. But there was a feeling inside of not feeling good because the dog wouldn't eat. She just wouldn't eat. So this morning I went out there again and I did the same thing, and she wouldn't eat, and I walked away, and I was just getting ready to throw the food away because it now had been used more than once and it was getting kind of old. I figured next time I try new food. And just as I started throwing away, I heard her cry. And I thought, oh, she wants another chance. I went back out there and she did it. She's smarter than people, I think. That only took her 24 hours to learn. Right? So where are you trying to control your environment to avoid? Right? Where are you trying to control your environment to avoid? That's what you need to ask yourself. Who are you trying to not be around? What are you trying to control? I mean, it could be different for each of us. But wherever you're trying to control your environment to avoid, you are choosing not to heal. Just like Ellie was choosing to stay the scared dog in the bedroom. That's what you're doing. So again, he's saying that it is love, intelligence, that is bringing that light overhead so that these lower level creatures, which really we experience as pain and suffering, are coming alive. And what we want to do now is we want to see that as a gift. We want to face that directly. I don't really have to teach you guys how. I've taught you how a million times. You know the hows, right? You practice inquiry if you need to practice inquiry. You practice rest, accept, and trust if you need to practice rest, accept, and trust. But, oh my God, stop trying to change the outer world so you can feel better. Stop trying to be Ellie, staying in the bedroom, not facing the wonderful life that she has. Because you're never going to get there that way. Practice the healing stuff that we teach you so carefully here in Awakening Together. Practice inquiry. Practice rest, accept, and trust. Practice, if you can't practice loving all, practice allowing all. Even when I got Ellie, everybody's probably known for some time that, I didn't want another dog. I didn't. That was my state of mind. I didn't want another dog. Ellie, Ron kept saying, I'll tell you how this happened. I started looking at dogs because my mom thought she wanted a dog. So I was looking at dogs, and I was showing Ron the dogs. Oh, look at this dog. It's so cute. Look at this dog, right? Well, Ron saw Ellie, and he thought she would be great for us. So he kept asking me, hey, why don't you call about Ellie? You know, maybe we can go see her. And I just didn't. Okay, whatever. I said, I don't want a dog, and I just didn't. But after about the fourth time, I realized, wow, you know, this isn't going away. So I called about Ellie. We went and got Ellie, and now I have this dog, Ellie, right? And so my friends, the ones that knew I didn't want a dog, they're like, well, why did you do this? Why did you put up with this? Why didn't you just tell him no? You didn't want a dog. Well, the answer is, and they know this because I've answered them, the answer is because I could just see the universe going in this way. And I don't want to resist anything. Yeah, it's true. I thought I didn't want a dog. But this is the direction things were going. And I went with it. And I've even told my friend, she's brought me to a deeper level of surrender because she's changed my life so much. Before, my life, you could say, was the life I wanted. In fact, I was like, wow, this is great. This is exactly the life I want. And guess what? It's not that way anymore. And I'm just as happy because I didn't fight it, because I said yes, because I went with it, right? I didn't avoid it. This is what we need to learn to do. One thing I've noticed since we've had Ellie, and again, my life has changed drastically. I'm not spending near as much time in La Vida. My life has become very domestic. I cook dinner every night, which I haven't done in years. I do dishes every night. I'm cleaning the house. Ron's living here with me full time. He wasn't. He was only here on weekends. My life has changed dramatically in a dime because of this dog. And what I've noticed is how much I trust it all. In fact, it actually amazes me how much I trust it all. I realize that somehow through this process of trusting all the previous gifts, of trusting the whole relationship with Laurent, of trusting everything that brought everything up and going through the healing process with it, I have learned unconditional trust. It doesn't even cross my mind that it shouldn't be this way. I trust the universe wholeheartedly. And that amazes me. There's nothing in me that says this little piece, it's all good except for this little piece. No, it's all good. Oh, another thing about Ellie is she gets car sick within 10 minutes. All previous dogs, we take hiking, we do all these things. Ellie can't go anywhere. So she's keeping us at home. We're not going out doing all that stuff. Or we can't do it together, at least. Somebody needs to stay home with Ellie. And I trust every bit of it. And then I remembered something that Bernadette Roberts said. She talked about the final awakening, the awakening from consciousness to the absolute, from the second principle of God to the first principle of God. And that she mentioned that in order to make it through that final awakening, what she needed and what we all need was the ability to trust God so much we don't even flinch. I thought, oh my God, I think I'm learning that. I mean, really, in order to trust God so much that you don't even flinch, you have to trust everything. There can't be an exception to your trust, right? That means even trusting the things that your mind would say is bad. Like it's bad to have a dog that can't go anywhere. It's bad not to be able to spend all my time in La Vida. That's what the mind would say. Anybody who knows me knows I'm telling the truth. They know what I love to do, right? This Ellie thing is bad. You can't have that anymore. You have to see everything as a gift. And the only way to see everything as a gift is to see everything as bringing you to the ultimate gift, which is awakening. All of the gifts along the way are stepping stones to the ultimate gift. And because you want the ultimate gift, you do not avoid any of the gifts along the way, right? If you're avoiding the gifts along the way, you never get to the ultimate gift. If Ellie avoids eating in front of us, she'll never realize what a loving family she's landed in. you know? So, again, the reason I picked this is I just thought it was so brilliant, where he refers to the intelligence, the love, and the beauty as the sun that wakes up those deep, dark creatures. I remember when I was with Michael Langford, when we weren't on the recording, he was making a little bit of fun of spiritual students and how they want peace and love, peace and love. And the reason he was making fun of them, although that is what the ultimate gift is, that isn't the path. The path has pain in it. The path has letting go in it. The path has inquiry in it. The path has non-avoidance in it. Jesus called it through the darkness to the light. But you guys know, you can't blame. You can't blame the circumstances. You can't blame other people. You have to accept it as a gift. This is happening in my life because I want awakening. And this is the intelligence of divine knowledge that knows how to awaken me, bringing this to me to wake up these dormant creatures in me so that I can inquire, so that I can rest through them, so I can see false beliefs, so I can let go, and I can be one step closer to what I want most of all. There's nothing to blame. It's all a gift. In fact, there's a line somewhere in A Course in Miracles that I used to really cling to during my purification. And it goes something like, the only purpose that the Holy Spirit sees in the world is healing. The only purpose of everything that happens is healing. If you can embrace that, and I beg of you to do so, just because I love you. If you can embrace that and stop having exceptions, you will heal pretty quickly. But every time you blame someone else, and I don't care what they do, they're doing it for you to help you awaken. I don't care who they are. They're still consciousness, and they're still the intelligence that's there helping you awaken. Every time you blame someone else, every time you blame a situation, you're saying, I don't want this gift. I don't want this stepping stone to the ultimate gift. Now, he does say here, and it's important for me to bring this out, he says to begin with, he calls it because he's referring to consciousness, because that's what you really are, but I'm going to use the word you. To begin with, you are not accustomed to abiding as yourself, and so you grasp for the old objects, the old habits. You'll do that. But you need to make that as brief as possible, which means as soon as you see that you're falling back on your old habits, as soon as you see it, seeing it as the awareness, seeing it as the next gift, as soon as you see, oh my gosh, I'm trying to control this, as soon as you see, oh my gosh, I'm blaming someone, as soon as you see, oh my gosh, I'm whatever your old habits are, in that moment, stop it and embrace a new habit. Whether the new habit is rest, accept, and trust, whether the new habit is self-inquiry, whether the new habit is root cause inquiry. We've taught you so many new habits. Whichever one rises up to embrace in that moment. And you'll heal. But don't judge yourself for falling back on your old habits, because you know what? It's just because it's an old habit. Because judging yourself is just another egoic response. Say, oh my gosh, I notice I'm yelling at my spouse. I'm going to stop right now. I apologize. I should not have yelled. You know what? I'm going to go in the bedroom. I need to take a break. That's what I used to do. Only it wasn't my spouse. I was yelling at Jasmine. The yelling, if yelling is your habit, yelling may come first. It may come first because it's the old habit. But when the seeing happens, you need to stop the yelling. And immediately bring in a new habit, whichever one feels right in the moment. This is how you're going to wake up. And when you bring in a new habit, you're starting to abide as yourself. You know what you are. We've told you, awareness, right? When you're practicing inquiry and you're looking, that's awareness. Rest, accept, and trust is noticing that you're being unaffected by this that is here now, right? I mean, so when you practice these new habits, you are learning the new habit of abiding as yourself. So don't judge yourself for following into the old habit. Just as soon as you see it, switch. Switch. And in the beginning, just like with Ellie, of course, like I said, she's smarter than we are because she learned in 24 hours to eat, with me holding the bowl. But at first she didn't. In fact, she wouldn't even have eye contact with me. She was looking around, total avoidance. Wouldn't even have eye contact with me. And part of the rule is I can't give her the food till she has eye contact with me. So in the beginning, you're going to be like her, like she was yesterday. But if you keep practicing, your habits will begin to change. And what you'll find yourself doing is falling on the habits that represent abidance as your true self, even prior to the ego habits. I mean, in effect, that's what I've done with this whole Ellie situation. With not once did I fall into my old habits. I just went with it and watched how everything changed and stayed happy. Noticed how the things I would have said I wanted have changed to what I would have said I didn't want, stayed happy. And I was amazed. I was amazed at the level of natural trust that has built up. But that natural trust didn't just happen. That happened through the practice with all of the previous gifts. Each gift is a gift. And they're leading you to the ultimate gift. He says the ease of being begins to pervade experience. That's my experience now. And that's what I'm noticing with Ellie. The ease of being pervades this experience. That's what all of the other gifts have brought me to. And I know that's what you guys want. So I hope you're listening. And with that, we're going to play our next song. Of course, if you want to donate to Awakening Together, this is a wonderful opportunity. And Dawn will put a link in the sanctuary that you can use. The song that I've selected is a song that, if you were listening, you'll rely on this a lot. It's a song I used to listen to a lot during my purification period. It's by Karen Drucker. It's called Relax, Let Go. Because when you relax, let go, you are practicing one of the new habits instead of the old habit. All right, thank you. And somebody wrote, I can't, the exact wording was, oh shoot. I saw message heard. Abigail wrote that, message heard. And I want to say thank you, Abigail. I'm glad because, again, this message is my gift to you. I'm speaking as someone who has learned to live in that ease of being, and I want you to join me here. So who would like to share?
Regina, I have a question.
Yes.
I would like to explore deeper what you mentioned when you had that situation happen with your daughter, where you were feeling that uncomfortable feeling about Ellie not eating. So there was actually an uncomfortable sensation happening in your body, and yet your daughter saw that or misinterpreted that you were unhappy. And I don't know if you can hear me because it says your network bandwidth is low. And then
I hear you.
Okay. And then you told her, which it was hard to explain to her, which there was also another lesson in there, because then her remark to you that she didn't even like your voice. So, but the thing that I'd like to explore, if you could expand on further, is how, even though you were having a very uncomfortable sensation, you were still able to be happy. It's almost like you were holding both, and happiness can exist even when there's like going on inside, and people can still think you're unhappy and not want to hear your voice.
Yeah. Well, she's my daughter, so of course maybe somebody else didn't want to hear my voice either, but I'll tell you, I learned that lesson with another dog. Actually, that was another dog lesson. Once upon a time when I did have Jamie, What I didn't want was another dog. I didn't want another dog in the house. And I was very clear about that. I don't want another dog. And that's when Danielle lived with me. And Danielle went out one day and got another dog without talking to me about it in advance. And I wasn't happy. But wait, let me back up just a little bit. 2 days before that, I was reading chapter 15 of The Untethered Soul, where he talks about unconditional happiness as a path to awakening. And I took a vow of unconditional happiness, 2 days before. And then Danielle gets this dog. I didn't want another dog in the house. And I was very frustrated that she went and got this dog without discussing it with me. Now, Jasmine, Danielle, and I lived together in a very harmonious relationship. We never fought. All we did was giggle. I got upset. Danielle got very upset. Danielle went out of the house and slammed the door. Jasmine got mad at me for making Danielle upset. She went in her bedroom and slammed the door. I sat down right there in the kitchen floor feeling so frustrated, remembering my vow of happiness. And I said, how can I be happy with this? And I heard, learn to be happy with feeling frustrated. And that's when I learned that what we do is we resist our feelings. We judge this feeling as bad, and we resist and try to push away this feeling. We avoid, there's that avoidance again, our feelings. So what I learned to do, think of the loving all method. This is written right into the loving all method. It says, love your negative emotions just as they are. What I learned to do is love the current experience as a current experience, just as it is. And then what happens is the happiness actually becomes in the forefront, but I don't have to push away when occasionally something else comes up, like not feeling good because my dog isn't eating, right? I don't have to push that away. In fact, one of the things Jasmine also said prior to getting tired of my voice, she has accused me before because I'm so happy all the time, no matter what happens. She said, you're just like a robot. You don't feel anything but happiness, right? Well, yesterday what she said to me was, well, at least you're not a robot, because she saw me feeling something else. But she couldn't, she didn't want to accept that I was okay. I was happy with this other feeling that was, which I'm very clear on, was temporarily brought up by a temporary situation. I knew it wouldn't last forever. I mean, there's so much clarity around it, and so this happens too. And you'll hear other spiritual teachers talk about this, where you can allow these other emotions, but they're very temporary. They're very clean. They move right through, and they don't affect the happiness. And that's why the happiness, the true self, is called unaffected. It doesn't mean nothing else is allowed. It means you've become aware of, this is always here. This peace is always here. This happiness is always here. This ease is always here. This contentment is always here, even as other things may temporarily move through. Again, I'm certain that, when my parents pass, which is an experience many of you have had that I haven't had yet, I'm certain there will be emotion around that. There was emotion when Jamie passed, but that emotion is now different in that it's a part of what is allowed within the joy, within the happiness. So I hope that answers your question. And with that, we're actually out of time. So why don't you play when you're ready. If you have something to say, you can say it first. But then play our last song, which is about getting back. Get Back by the Beatles. All right. Thank you very much, everyone. I need to move on, but I hope y'all will stay for the fellowship program if you have something more to share about today's weekly gathering. Thank you, Don, releasing the mic.
Thank you for watching. This was our weekly gathering that we hold online. For more information, you can visit our website at awakening-together.org, or you can subscribe to our Awakening Together channel and click the bell for more notifications when we post our weekly gatherings. Thank you again for watching.